the most radical ideas become common sense. The only question is how long it takes. In 2005, anyone suggesting nuclear power could save the climate was dismissed as naive or dangerous. Today, governments race to build reactors. This video is about the Overton Window, the range of ideas considered acceptable in mainstream discourse at any given time. Ideas outside the window get dismissed as extreme or crazy. Then the window shifts. By the end, you will understand how public opinion actually moves and why the positions everyone mocks today might become the policies everyone accepts tomorrow. We will look at psychedelic therapy, age restrictions on social media, and why remote work went from perk to expectation almost overnight. In the early 1990s, a policy analyst named Joseph Overton worked at the Mackinac Center, a free market think tank in Michigan. He noticed something that changed how he saw politics entirely. Politicians track public opinion. They adapt to it. They only support policies the public already finds acceptable. If you walk into a senator's office with a brilliant idea that voters hate, it does not matter how right you are. That senator will smile, nod, and do nothing. Overton designed a simple brochure to illustrate this. He drew a spectrum with 6 stages: unthinkable, radical, acceptable, sensible, popular, and policy. Politicians operate in a narrow band between sensible and popular. They will not risk their careers on ideas outside that zone. Once an idea is merely acceptable, its odds of becoming law start falling. Ideas labeled radical or unthinkable have virtually no chance, even if they make perfect sense. Overton's insight was strategic. If you want policy change, do not lobby politicians directly. Shift what the public considers thinkable first. Move the window, and the politicians will follow. This explains something puzzling about activists. They often advocate positions more extreme than what they actually want. A group demanding the abolition of prisons might actually want prison reform. A movement calling for open borders might really want immigration reform. By staking out an extreme position, they expand the range of acceptable discourse. They pull the window toward them, making their true goal seem moderate by comparison. Sociologist Herbert Haynes documented this in 1984. He found that during the civil rights movement, moderate Black organizations saw increased funding when radical groups emerged. Malcolm X made Martin Luther King Jr. look reasonable. The radicals shifted the window, and moderates walked through the opening. In June of 2003, Joseph Overton died in a plane crash near Cairo, Michigan. He was 43 years old. His colleague, Joseph Lehman, named the concept the Overton Window in his honor. The idea outlived its creator and became one of the most useful frameworks for understanding how societies change. The pattern repeats across history. An idea starts in the zone of unthinkable. Activists push it toward radical. The public debates. The window slides. What was radical becomes acceptable. What was acceptable becomes sensible. What was sensible becomes policy. Women's suffrage took 50 years to travel this path. In 1870, the idea of women voting sat firmly in the unthinkable zone for most Americans. Suffragettes faced arrest, force-feeding in prison, and brutal beatings. On November 14, 1917, 33 women were tortured at the Occoquan Workhouse in Virginia. Lucy Burns was chained with her hands over her head and forced to stand all night. The public outcry that followed pushed the idea from radical toward acceptable. 3 years later, the 19th Amendment made it policy. Same-sex marriage traveled the same spectrum faster. In 1996, it was unthinkable for most politicians. 68% of Americans opposed it. The Defense of Marriage Act passed with overwhelming bipartisan support. 118 Democrats voted yes in the House alone. But activists kept pushing the window. Civil unions moved the idea from unthinkable to radical. Visibility in media moved it from radical to acceptable. Within 20 years, the numbers inverted. By 2015, 60% supported same-sex marriage. The Supreme Court made it policy. But here is what makes the Overton window interesting. It moves in both directions. Ideas can travel from policy back toward unthinkable. Indoor smoking was policy a generation ago. Restaurants, airplanes, offices. Today, the idea of lighting up indoors sits somewhere between radical and unthinkable. The window shifted through decades of public health campaigns. Segregation traveled the same path in reverse. Practices that were once policy became unthinkable after the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Even prohibition shows this. From 1920 to 1933, banning alcohol was policy. Today, the idea sits in the unthinkable zone. People mock the folly of prohibition as if it were always absurd. It was not. The window simply moved. The most interesting Overton shifts are the ones happening while you watch. Psilocybin, the active compound in magic mushrooms, was Schedule 1 for decades. The federal government classified it alongside heroin as having no accepted medical use and high potential for abuse. That was the Overton consensus. Psychedelics were for hippies and criminals, not doctors. Suggesting otherwise would end a medical career. Then the research accumulated. Studies at Johns Hopkins and New York University showed psilocybin could treat depression and addiction where other treatments failed. Oregon legalized therapeutic psilocybin in 2020. Colorado followed in 2022. Australia approved it for treatment-resistant depression in 2023, becoming the first country to do so nationally. The window moved from unthinkable to acceptable in less than a decade. Social media regulation shows the window swinging in real time. A decade ago, age verification for social media seemed like an attack on free speech. The idea sat in the radical zone. Today, it has bipartisan support. Florida passed a law requiring anyone under 16 to get parental consent for social media accounts. Australia banned social media entirely for users under 16. The idea moved from radical to sensible to policy in just a few years. The question is no longer whether to regulate, but how much. Remote work shifted faster than anyone predicted. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, only 6.5% of private sector workers worked from home in 2019. During the pandemic peak, 69% of the American workforce went remote. By 2025, that number stabilized between 22 and 26%. The window moved so fast, most people barely noticed. Social media accelerates these shifts, but also fragments them. According to research from Malmo University, platforms can now shift the Overton window suddenly and in unexpected directions. They have expanded the window in both directions, moving both ends out from the middle. This creates something new. Different groups now have different windows. Pew Research found that 63% of consistent conservatives and 49% of consistent liberals say most of their close friends share their political views. We are not all looking at the same window anymore. Knowing this changes how you evaluate ideas. When you encounter something that seems obviously crazy, pause. Ask yourself, am I seeing this idea clearly, or am I just seeing where the current window is? Common sense is just the ideas that won.